This is human brain. On the above, this is called cerebrum, and it is divided by median longitudinal fissure. Median longitudinal fissure, and this by median longitudinal fissure divides the cerebrum into right and left cerebral hemisphere. And this median longitudinal fissure divides the brain anterior part and posterior part completely divides. Anterior part and posterior part completely divides. This is anterior part of the fissure and this is the posterior part of the fissure. But at the middle, it is connected by corpus callosum. Corpus callosum. This is corpus callosum. This one is corpus callosum. So, by median longitudinal fissure, anterior part and posterior part of the cerebral hemisphere is completely divided. And at the center or middle portion, it is connected by corpus callosum. Now, this cerebrum from above, it is looking like ovoid shape and maximum diameter at the parietal tuberosity. And anterior end is narrower, posterior end is greater or broader. Surface area of the cerebrum, we see this is 1/3 of the surface area. By the Salsaian gyri, it is enlarged, the surface area is enlarged 3 times. This is cerebral hemisphere, and at the posterior part, this is cerebellum, and it is divided into cerebellar hemisphere. 2 cerebellar hemisphere. This one. This is divided into 2 cerebellar hemisphere. Okay. Now, 1/2 of the cerebrum. This is right-sided cerebral hemisphere. Hemisphere. Hemi means half. So, this is anterior end. That is, this pointed end is called frontal pole. Anterior pointed end is called frontal pole, and the posterior pointed end is called occipital pole. And this one is the anterolateral part. This end is called temporal pole. So, 3 poles: frontal pole, temporal pole, and occipital pole. Borders: superomedial border, inferomedial border, and infrolateral border. This is infrolateral border, this is infromedial border, and this is superomedial border. This is superolateral surface, this is medial surface, and this is inferior surface. Inferior surface is divided into small anterior part called orbital surface and posterior larger part called tentorial surface. It rests on the tentorium cerebri. So, tentorial surface, larger posterior part, and anterior smaller part is called orbital surface. So, inferior surface is divided into tentorial surface and orbital surface. Now, lobes of the brain. We know 4 lobes of the brain. The 4 lobes, that is, we know this one is the central sulcus. This one is the central sulcus. Now, characteristics of the central sulcus, you must remember 3 points. The central sulcus, from superolateral surface, it cuts the medial surface and cuts the superomedial border and enters into the medial surface. So, 1 point again, central sulcus cuts the superomedial border and enters into the medial surface, and it going downwards laterally, anterolaterally, but it never enters into the lateral surface. That is, it ends before lateral surface. So, it cuts the superomedial border and enters into medial surface. Second point is, it is going downwards and laterally, anterolaterally, but not reaching in the lateral surface. It ends here before lateral surface. Third point is, from the frontal pole and occipital pole, midpoint of the frontal pole and occipital pole, it is 1 cm behind. So, midpoint of frontal pole and occipital pole, it is 1 cm behind. These 3 points you must remember. So, central sulcus. Before central sulcus, we have another parallel sulcus that is called precentral sulcus. This one is the precentral sulcus. It not cuts the superomedial border. And after the central sulcus, there is another sulcus. This is called post-central sulcus. So, precentral sulcus and post-central sulcus. In between central sulcus and post-central sulcus, the gyrus is called post-central gyrus. It is sensory area. And in between precentral sulcus and central sulcus, it is motor area, and it is called the precentral gyrus, post-central gyrus, limited by precentral sulcus and post-central sulcus. Now, lateral sulcus starts from the inferior surface. Lateral sulcus is deep sulcus. And it starts from the inferior surface. You know, this is inferior surface, this is orbital surface, this is anterior surface. So, lateral sulcus starts from the interpedunclar fossa, and it starts from here, from the inferior surface, going upwards and anteriorly, and then coming into the frontal lobe and temporal lobe. it is coming from inferior surface to superolateral surface in between frontal lobe and temporal lobe. So here it is starting point in the inferior surface. This is called stem of lateral surface. Stem of lateral surface. It is stem of lateral surface. After coming into the superolateral surface, it divides into anterior horizontal rami, anterior ascending rami, and posterior rami. So it divides into three ramus. One is anterior horizontal rami, another is anterior ascending rami, and another third one is the posterior ramus. So three ramus: anterior horizontal, anterior ascending, and posterior ramus of lateral surface. Of which anterior horizontal and anterior ascending, they are length 2.5 centimeter, but the posterior ramus is of length 7.5 centimeter. So posterior ramus is more longer. So anterior horizontal and anterior ascending and posterior ramus of lateral surface. And in between the anterior horizontal and anterior ascending, the area is called pars triangularis. And below the anterior horizontal part, it is called pars orbitalis. And in between anterior ascending and posterior ramus, the part is called pars opercularis. So pars opercularis, pars triangularis, and pars orbitalis, divided by three rami of the lateral sulcus. Now this lateral sulcus ends like it is going horizontally and ends in an upper position. This is upper position. From the posterior ramus, if we draw an imaginary line, and in the medial surface, you see this is the parieto-occipital sulcus, and this is calcarine sulcus. This one is the calcarine sulcus. So calcarine sulcus is long sulcus. This one is called calcarine sulcus, and this one is the parieto-occipital sulcus. It cuts the supromedial border. So parieto-occipital sulcus, and this one is the calcarine sulcus. In between the part of the brain is called cuneus. This part is called cuneus, and upper part is called precuneus. This one is called precuneus. It is in between cingulate sulcus and parieto-occipital sulcus. The quadrangular part is called precuneus, and the triangular part in between parieto-occipital sulcus and calcarine sulcus, this is called cuneus. Now from the parieto-occipital sulcus up to the preoccipital nos. This one is the preoccipital nos. This point is called preoccipital nos. So from the parieto-occipital sulcus up to the preoccipital nos, if we draw an imaginary line, vertical line, it is vertical line. And from the posterior ramus, horizontal part of the posterior ramus, its upturned end is going upwards. But from the horizontal part of the lateral sulcus, if we draw another imaginary line, it cuts or touches the first imaginary line, that is from the parieto-occipital sulcus to the preoccipital nos. This point is called preoccipital nos. This is called preoccipital nos, and this is an horizontal line. It cuts. So from the lateral sulcus, the part below the cerebral hemisphere is called temporal lobe. This portion is called temporal lobe, and this vertical imaginary line behind that, the part is called occipital lobe. This one is occipital lobe, and the below of lateral sulcus, the portion is called temporal lobe. And this is central sulcus. In front of that, up to the frontal pole, this is called frontal lobe. This portion is called frontal lobe. This is temporal lobe. From behind the vertical line from parieto-occipital sulcus to preoccipital nos, this portion is called occipital lobe, and above the imaginary line, this portion behind the central sulcus, this is called parietal lobe. So four lobes: frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, and occipital lobe, and it is seen there. You see, this one is the first imaginary line. It is from the parieto-occipital sulcus to the preoccipital nos. This first imaginary line, vertical line, and this is the posterior ramus of lateral sulcus, and horizontal part of it is elongated to touch the first vertical line. This is second imaginary line. Behind the imaginary line, above the lateral sulcus and behind the central sulcus, this portion is called parietal lobe, and below the lateral sulcus, this portion is called temporal lobe, and in front of central sulcus up to frontal pole, this one is called frontal lobe. But these four lobes, beside that, in the floor of the lateral sulcus, you see a portion of hidden cerebral cortex. This one is the hidden cerebral cortex. This hidden cerebral cortex, it is called insula. This insula is limited by one circular sulcus. This one is the circular sulcus, and anterior portion of the insula is pointed. It is called Lyman insula, this anterior portion. So this hidden part, you see, this is like cerebral cortex, like cerebrum, and it is hidden into the floor of lateral sulcus. So this is to lip of lateral sulcus. If we push downwards and upwards of the two lateral lip, we see the hidden portion of the cerebral cortex. It is called insula, and it is covered by, encircled by circular sulcus. The anterior end is pointed. It is called Lyman insula. So 4 lobes and 1 hidden part is called insula. It is called insula. Again, you see, this is lateral sulcus and this is central sulcus. So in front of that, this portion is called frontal lobe, and in the frontal lobe we find one sulcus called precentral sulcus, and another 2 sulci. One is upper and another is inferior, upper and lower, superior or inferior frontal sulcus. It is horizontal, coming from the precentral sulcus. So the suprafrontal surface of the frontal lobe is dividing by 2 sulcus, superior frontal sulcus and inferior frontal sulcus, into 3 areas: superior, middle and inferior frontal gyrus. Superior, middle and inferior frontal gyrus. This inferior frontal gyrus again divided by ramus of the lateral sulcus into anterior horizontal and anterior ascending ramus by pars triangularis, pars orbitalis and pars opercularis. So inferior part of the frontal lobe is called inferior frontal gyrus, and this inferior frontal gyrus again divided into pars orbitalis and pars triangularis by anterior horizontal and anterior ascending ramus of the lateral sulcus. Now this is frontal lobe and this is temporal lobe. This temporal lobe again divided by 2 longitudinal sulcus. One is superior and another is inferior temporal sulcus into 3 areas: superior, middle and inferior temporal gyrus. So superior and inferior temporal sulcus, dividing the area into 3: upper or superior, middle and inferior temporal gyrus. Again, this portion is called behind the central sulcus and above the lateral sulcus with the imaginary line. This portion and in front of occipital sulcus or occipital lobe, this portion is called parietal lobe. Parietal lobe is divided by intraparietal sulcus into superior and inferior parietal lobe. So parietal lobe divided into 2 areas by intraparietal sulcus. This one is the intraparietal sulcus dividing the parietal lobe into superior and inferior parietal lobule. Superior and inferior parietal lobule. This inferior parietal lobule again divided by upturned end of posterior ramus of lateral sulcus. You see, this is posterior ramus of lateral sulcus and its upturned end is this portion of the infraparietal lobule is called supramarginal gyrus. This portion is called supramarginal gyrus, and upper temporal sulcus, its upturned end divides the inferior parietal lobule into, this one is supramarginal and this is angular gyrus. This one is called angular gyrus. So inferior parietal lobule is divided into 2 areas. One is bounded by posterior end of the lateral sulcus into superior marginal and angular gyrus by superior temporal sulcus. This is parietal lobe and this is occipital lobe. This occipital lobe, you see one smaller semilunar shaped sulcus. This one is the lunate sulcus. You see, this one is lunate sulcus. And this is the temporal pole. So lunate sulcus in front of temporal occipital pole. This one is lunate sulcus. So this is important. This one is lunate sulcus. This is supralateral sulcus with the sulci and gyrus. And this one is the medial sulcus. This medial surface is cut by central sulcus, and this area surrounding the central sulcus is called paracentral lobule. This one is called paracentral lobule, and this is very important for the position of defecation center and micturition center here. So in the medial surface, one important feature, that is the corpus callosum. This is the corpus callosum. You know this. This is the rostrum, this is genu, this is body, and this is the splenium of corpus callosum. Corpus callosum, very important structure for you, and it is a very important short note. So anterior end is called rostrum, this angular part is called genu, and this long part is called, vertical part is called body, and then posterior part is called splenium. So this is splenium, body, genu, rostrum. Above the corpus callosum, there is a sulcus. This is called supracallosal sulcus. And above supracallosal sulcus, it is the area limited by cingulate sulcus and supracallosal sulcus. In between the gyrus is called cingulate gyrus. This one is called cingulate gyrus. So cingulate sulcus, supracallosal sulcus, and this is cingulate gyrus. And in front of larger area, this is called medial frontal gyrus. This portion is called medial frontal gyrus, cingulate gyrus, corpus callosum, cingulate sulcus, and supracallosal sulcus. Again, this sulcus is called parieto-occipital sulcus, and this one also deeper sulcus, it is called calcarine sulcus. This is called calcarine sulcus. This is called calcarine sulcus, and this is called parieto-occipital sulcus. This triangular portion is called cuneus, and above that is quadrangular area, this is called precuneus. And you see splenium, over it there is smaller sulcus, suprasplenial sulcus. This one is called suprasplenial sulcus, and it is separated from cingulate sulcus to precuneus. So suprasplenial sulcus, this is parieto-occipital sulcus, this is calcarine sulcus in the medial sulcus. So this is corpus callosum, and the inside there is a cavity, it is called lateral ventricle. This is lateral ventricle. Lateral ventricle has 4 parts. So this is lateral ventricle. It is separate thing. We will discuss it later on. So medial surface, supralateral surface, medial surface. And in the inferior surface, you see, this is inferior surface. This is olfactory sulcus. This one is the olfactory sulcus. Here lies the olfactory bulb and olfactory tract. So olfactory sulcus. Medial to that, the portion of the brain is called gyrus recti. Rest of the orbital surface, again divided into 4 areas by one H-shaped sulcus. You see, this is beautiful H-shaped looking. These are the 2 arms, and this is the middle arm. This is H-shaped sulcus dividing the rest of the orbital surface into 4 areas: anterior, posterior, medial, lateral, orbital gyrus. So this sulcus, H-shaped sulcus, very beautiful. This is H-shaped sulcus dividing the orbital surface into 4 areas: anterior, posterior, medial, and lateral orbital gyrus. So inferior surface is dividing into smaller anterior part called orbital surface, and rest larger part is called tentorial surface. It rests on the tentorium cerebellum. This one is the tentorial surface. This tentorial surface is dividing into most medial sulcus of the tentorial surface. This is called collateral sulcus. This sulcus is called collateral sulcus. This one is the collateral sulcus. And there is another sulcus. This another sulcus divides the tentorial surface into 2 areas. This is called occipitotemporal sulcus. This sulcus is called occipitotemporal sulcus, and medial sulcus is called collateral sulcus. This one is the collateral sulcus. This collateral sulcus, medial to that is the gyrus is called parahippocampal gyrus. And anterior end of the parahippocampal gyrus, this portion is called uncus. This portion is called uncus, and this uncus laterally limited by a sulcus called rhinal sulcus. This one is called rhinal sulcus. The anterior end of the parahippocampal gyrus is called uncus, and it is limited laterally by one sulcus called rhinal sulcus. Rhinal sulcus. So this anterior end of the parahippocampal gyrus is called uncus, and it is limited laterally by rhinal sulcus. And medial sulcus is called, in the tentorial surface, is called collateral sulcus, and the medial part is called parahippocampal gyrus. And this occipitotemporal sulcus divides the rest of the tentorial surface into superior and inferior occipitotemporal gyrus. So tentorial surface is dividing into 3 larger area. One is inferior, superior occipitotemporal gyrus, and the medial one is called parahippocampal gyrus. This collateral sulcus has, and this calcarine sulcus. This one is the calcarine sulcus. And this is the collateral sulcus. This collateral sulcus anteriorly placed, and it causes an elevation and eminence in the inferior horn of lateral sulcus. So inferior horn is a part of lateral ventricle, and this calcarine sulcus also and causes an eminence in the posterior horn of lateral ventricle. So posterior horn and inferior horn has got an eminence by collateral sulcus into collateral eminence and by calcareous sulcus in the posterior horn into calcar avis, and you will see that in the lateral ventricle lateral. So these are the sulci and gyri in the cerebral hemisphere in short. You see this hemisphere, cerebral hemisphere, we know from childhood, right-sided person and left-sided person. So lateralization of the cerebral hemisphere, right-sided person and left-handed person. So lateralization, right-handed or left-handed. One hemisphere, right hemisphere, that controls the left part of the body, and left hemisphere controls the right part of our body. This lateralization or dominant hemisphere appears or complete at the first end of first decade, that means at the age of 10 years. Before that, we can't conclude the person is left-handed or right-sided. So lateralization or dominant hemisphere, most of the 90% of the people are right-handed person. So their dominant hemisphere is left hemisphere, and only 10% or less they are left-handed person. So right cerebral hemisphere is dominant. Most of the people are right-handed. So their left hemisphere is dominant hemisphere.